companies. So they're in the Hyperloop space, and the thing about that is that it's a very nascent industry. So there's a couple companies in the space that are really essentially racing to build the product out, but they're piggybacking over each other, building off of each other's momentum. So in that role, I was working primarily in business development. So there was a lot of project management, a lot of meetings, a lot of forming strategic partnerships, and that side is something that I haven't really experienced in other internships that I've had. A little more detail. One of the big projects I was working on was engaging a consortium of 20 companies that we partnered with that were very eager and willing to contribute some sort of engineering capacities to building our system, but we hadn't really engaged with them at all. So what I did was I was working with the head of our engineering integration to identify the gaps in the system, and essentially looking at these companies in the consortium, figuring out what their core competencies were, and then scheduling meetings and getting those conversations rolling to see if they could help us where we had gaps. I would actually say really working closely with my boss. So he was the head of our global operations, and he was a really young guy. He had experience with a startup that he ended up selling, and he was overall just a very good people person. I think in business development specifically, that's a very important skill to have. So he really taught me a lot about listening in meetings and sort of the attitude and comportment that you should bring in a lot of these professional settings. And other than that, I think he was, he was just overall a really great guy. We hung out a couple of times outside of work, and he was definitely the biggest mentor figure for me on the job. So I would say in terms of challenges, the projects that I worked on, there wasn't really any immediate sense of feedback. So I think just in general, coming out of college, when you're used to really having grades on papers, very clear rubrics, that's not really what it's like. Even at a bigger established company, but at startups where, there's no rule book, that's something that definitely takes adjusting to. I think, it's good to keep an open mind, but especially at very early stage startups where you might not necessarily have a very clearly defined role. Again, it depends. If you're doing engineering, it's most likely to be more defined. But for me in business development, where you're working on 1,000 different projects, it's on one hand, you're going to feel the energy, you're going to, you're hopefully working on big impact projects, but in the role that I was in, it was really, in a lot of circumstances, it was filling in the gaps, because those are essential things that need to be done. So I think if I could do it again, I would definitely spend more time in the beginning when deciding to work for the company and speaking with your boss about what your role is and clearly defining it. So yeah, I guess my advice would be really to think carefully about the decision, because like I said, in my position, I was doing a lot, but walking away from the summer, it was valuable in terms of building soft skills, but coming away from it, I couldn't really say, I built this product, or, something that would come from having a more structured role. So I guess that's really the biggest thing I would consider if you're thinking about working for a startup, is what sort of skills are you going to actually be building. I think there's tremendous value to the soft skills that I picked up, but at this point in my career, I think it's really important to be building some tangible skills as well.